Welcome to the Mindful Healers podcast with
Dr. Jessie Mahoney
and Dr. Ni-Cheng Liang.
We are here to help you learn to pause and be present, awaken your breath, and harness the ripple effects of mindfulness for radiant health.
We get you. We know you. We are you.
We have both been successful on the surface, yet struggling underneath. We have both had cluttered brains, been overwhelmed, and exhausted.
We're healers who have found solutions and want to share them with you.
Join us here to discover a better way.
Welcome to the Mindful Healers podcast. Our episode today is on Nature Heals, a reminder that our podcast is not medical advice.
The intention of today's episode is to remind you of both the healing and mind-opening power of nature, and hopefully to inspire you to spend more time in nature on your own, and perhaps with us at our upcoming Mindful Healers Retreat, Connect in Nature, this July.
We hope that you'll discover that nature is available everywhere for you to notice. You only have to look. And we hope that the main takeaway is that you'll learn the beneficial physiology of being in nature and understand that there is science behind its health impacts when you are out in nature.
And also perhaps the detrimental effects of not spending time in nature on your nervous system as well. So, as many of you know, I am very much a nature aficionado. People talk about how much time I spend in nature. And for me, it is healing, but it's also almost as important as like eating healthy or sleeping for me to be in nature. And if I haven't had fresh air or sunlight, I'm just not a healthy human. But one of the reasons that it is so important to me is also as a pediatrician. Nature is really important for kids. And as many of you probably realize, kids spend less and less and less time in nature. And our world has shifted away from nature. When I was a kid, we spent all day outside. We were kind of sent outside to be outside, and we would come in for meals and check in. But the world was very, very different than it is now. And so one of the things that we started doing as pediatricians about 10 years ago was to actually prescribe nature. And the thought was, if we put it on a prescription pad, maybe people would send their kids out to spend more time in nature, and thus they would be healthier. But I think that part of it wasn't just about the exercise. It was about the mental health benefits of being in nature and the healing physiologic benefits of noticing the natural world. And so we started also educating parents about something called the nature deficit disorder. And there is a researcher who wrote a book called, I don't know how you say his last name, but it's Richard Louv. And he wrote a book called The Last Child in the Woods, and also about nature deficit disorder. And so the idea is that it's necessary for our human health. And so it's not just healing and sort of a perk or something that we would like or something that's, an added benefit, but something that's actually necessary for our health. And if you think about the way that kids spend their time, they used to spend summer camps out in nature, and now they go to computer camp and soccer camp and internships and do things like that over the summer. And so realizing that perhaps we need to be more intentional and mindful about the time that we spend in nature and noticing how it serves us and perhaps how much better we feel. I remember spending time with my youngest son, who had a couple of years where he was really into snowboarding. And he said to me at some point, he has ADHD, as many of you know, and he said to me at some point, I think I'm just meant to be outside. When I'm outside, I feel normal and I feel fine, and I wouldn't need any medicine and everything would be great. And so we actually know that a lot of people who struggle with ADD and focus issues and mental health issues, if they are outside or they're a park ranger or they're working out in nature, they don't actually need any medicine. And so realizing that there are a lot of real concrete examples of how nature is kind of a form of therapy. It also kind of is like our play episode. I was just thinking that it inspires creativity. And you think about kids out in nature, they are building stick houses and they're, things, everything becomes creative and fantasy and something else. And all of our senses awaken, as we were talking about in our about our retreat, awakening the senses in nature. You notice how things feel, how they smell, what you hear, the sand on your toes. You notice all those tiny things, and with that, you get a natural sense of mindfulness, and then you get all the benefits of mindfulness. And so we entitled this episode "Nature Heals," because nature does heal in the sense that it heals our nervous system, and we know it lessens stress, and we know it helps with a lot of mental health conditions. And it also creates connection to the natural world. And there's even studies to show it increases compassion. And so there's so many magical benefits of nature, not just for kids, even though I've talked a bit more about that, but also for adults. And what I'd really like to offer is for kids and adults together. It's a place where we can actually play really easily. Things just sort of happen naturally. We all tend to be more playful and more light in nature. The other thing I like about nature is it's sort of a natural teacher. We put our kids in school and we sort of force feed them things, but in nature, it offers all of these very natural lessons. The seasons change, just like I often talk about seasons in relationships. Well, nature has seasons, and things that grow old in nature, it's just a part of life. And the older tree is not necessarily less beautiful than the younger tree. It has had different experiences. There's also renewal. If you think about spring and weather, there's stormy days, just like there are down days and off days and stormy seas. And then there are calm days without the wind that are, the water is like glass. And the other thing that nature teaches us is to accept things that are out of our control. And so, as I like to think about nature, it's just got so many lessons in there and so many sort of magical healing powers that why not start spending more and more time in it?
As you were talking, it brought up some thoughts. Nature is medicine. And as part of that medicine, you can play with nature, like the sticks that you had mentioned, and anything else the kids pick up and pretend that a little sprig of a pine tree is an actual tree for their little stick village that they just built. For me,
I just had one other thought about the play, that a lot of things in nature are also playing. If you think about like butterflies and birds, and you're often watching them sort of dance and flit and enjoy just sort of living and being. And it's something that many of us in our busy world today have kind of forgotten. And so many things in nature, we often talk about the being versus the doing. Nature is exceptional at being.
yeah, if you watch nature closely, it kind of exemplifies how we can be, perhaps, to bring on more healing.
Yeah.
I absolutely love nature. I didn't used to appreciate it as much growing up. And now looking back and thinking about being a latchkey kid and how you had mentioned just being outside and making sure we got home before sunset. But otherwise, just like playing in the woods with our neighbors and our friends and uh, exploring and using our imaginations. Very, very much free play. And then through medical training, I definitely didn't appreciate nature. But for the last 10 years after the cancer journey, it definitely became a mainstay for my self care routine. And I do this by hiking, paddling, and then mindful walking in nature.
Yeah. And I find nature the easiest place to be mindful. So for me, it's something that I can't not be in. It's literally almost like air or water for me. I have to have some amount of nature every day as sort of like a neurologic salve for my soul. I guess that would be I clearly was meant to be in nature, but that it is a place where it inspires mindfulness naturally. And so I don't have to put in that effort to be mindful. I find myself just noticing the things in nature and really being able to tap into those five senses that we often talk about as tools in mindfulness, and looking and noticing and enjoying and appreciating and just being. And that nature itself can just inspire that if you give yourself the chance to slow down. That's the one thing I think is sometimes we get out in nature, and I am a skier, and sometimes it's, skiing down and skiing as many runs as you can and doing all these things. And instead, if you just kind of stop on the side of the mountain and appreciate the sparkle on the snow and the light on the trees and the noises and the crackles and all of those things, that's really where the real beauty is found. And so its healing powers are magnified when you stop and you slow down and you actually allow yourself to be in it, or bathe in it. I know you're going to talk about that a little bit more, but whether it's bathing in the forest or toes in the sand, but like really, really noticing and being mindful and seeing all the magic that's right there under our nose that we miss so often as we move through the day on autopilot.
So I am going to share a little bit about the science behind the practice that's known as forest bathing. So in Japanese, it's called Shinrin Yoku. And in one study published by Lee et al. In 2016, forest bathers who were in the forest for 80 minutes had significantly reduced pulse rates and significantly decreased scores for depression, fatigue, anxiety, and confusion. They had increased scores for vigor. And interestingly, some physiologic markers, so urinary adrenaline after forest bathing showed a tendency to decrease. And then urinary dopamine after forest bathing was significantly lower than that after urban area walking. So when forest bathers were challenged with urban area walking, their urine dopamine levels were decreased, suggesting that there was a relaxing effect of forest bathing. And then in another study, forest bathing increased natural killer cell activity, boosting the immune system. So at the cellular level, there are tremendous benefits. It's also super accessible. So you don't even need a forest to quote unquote forest bathe. Even a park or your backyard will do. And as you had mentioned, like a snow covered hill or a mountain. And the whole point is, according to the same researcher, Lee, in her 2018 Time magazine article, she states to let nature enter through your eyes, ears, nose, mouth, hands, and feet.
And that brings me back to kids, because if you look at little kids in nature when they're little, before we've sort of trained them to not eat sand and not get dirty and not do all those things, they actually let it in, literally let nature enter in through all those crevices. But they're really fully experiencing it. And that perhaps we as adults could really learn from that and know that a lot of that is a way of soothing the nervous system, but also learning and inspiring, just like play, inspiring that creativity and different neuronal pathways and sort of awakening of different parts of your body and spirit and soul that get shut off when we're on our screens and away from nature all the time. The other thing I think is that we often sort of ignore or dismiss the gifts in nature. And we think these days of nature is not crucial to our survival. And perhaps it's not, in that you can get all the food in the grocery store and, we don't need necessarily, we're not living in nature. And yet I think that for so many of us, it is actually crucial to our survival. And if you think about our world sort of global warming issues and big societal problems, all of the things, heart disease, depression, poor sleep, droughts, wildfires, rising oceans, tsunami threats, they're all sort of traced back to our personal and societal disconnection from the earth. And really that we've gotten away from our true nature as humans. And so our true nature of humans is to be in nature. And yet we've created a world now where we are not in nature as much as we used to be. And I think we're noticing it in terms of our own human health and our world health. And so one thought that I really love is this idea that the natural world has so much to give and to teach us. but that Mother Nature doesn't shout. And I love that because, of course, we always think of mothers who shout, right? But Mother Nature doesn't shout. Mother Nature just has all these beautiful things that you can appreciate. Although now that I'm sharing this quote, I actually think that Mother Nature is starting to shout because we haven't been paying attention. And that is perhaps the snowmageddon that people are experiencing right now and the wildfires that we have in the fall. I know we've talked about doing a fall retreat and not taking the options of places for fear of wildflower fires. And to think that that's like the way that we live now. And so that maybe Mother Nature is beginning to shout, but generally she doesn't shout. And so what happens is the TV shouts and the commercials shout and the cell phones shout and the video games shout. And so that we often really miss that sort of gentle, kind whisper of the breeze or the beautiful, sparkly morning that's out there. And so if we realize that our well-being is actually our natural state and nature helps us with our well-being, that it's all sort of intertwined. And so if our true nature is not stress and it's not worry and it's not anxiety, and it's not overwhelm, and it's 100% not Zoom, right? Our true nature is being in sunshine, playing with sticks and feet in the sand, feeling the breeze on your face. And so the offer from this podcast today, I think, is to remember that nature heals and remember that it's medicine. It's really probably one of the most important medicines. And we can even look at things like vitamin D, right? If you don't spend time in the sunshine, we now are having to do all the supplementation because we're not out in the sunshine. And literally, our human physiology is meant to be in nature. And so, can we slow down and quiet our mind and breathe deeply and get back to our sort of true nature, getting back to the playing and the being, whether it's toes in the sand or the mud or the water or the grass, anywhere? And can you let it in? I love that idea of letting it in through your fingers and your toes and your nose and your mouth and your eyes and your ears.
As you were speaking, Mother Nature has, I think, been shouting and screaming and kicking feet and punching with the global pandemic. I think that's been a really, really loud wake up call. And I remember when, and it might head that way, but March 2020, when basically our state shut down and much of the United States shut down and we quarantined. I remember people telling me that they started being able to hear the birds again, that there was more nature sounds that they were noticing. And maybe they were always there and they hadn't been home long enough to even notice. Or maybe nature was like, oh, finally, like we can breathe again and we can live again because there isn't as much pollution. So I wanted to
Well,
bring
yeah, I
that
was
up.
thinking in where I live, I live near the metro train lines and the airport, planes fly overhead. And so when all of that stopped, you actually really could hear the birds that you hadn't been able to hear for a while. But I also think part of it was that we all as a society slowed down. And when you slow down, you begin to notice the natural world more. And when we move through on autopilot, we often don't notice it. And I know I had written about recently taking a mindful walk. And I think so many of us now take a walk with our podcasts in our ears and our earbuds, or we're listening to music, and that we then don't hear the waves and the wind in the trees and the birds chirping. And that there is this tremendous power of being in nature without anything distracting you. And a walk with a friend is fantastic, but a walk by yourself in nature also provides something that's very different. And perhaps our body needs both of those.
Yeah. And when you have something already in your ear, like a podcast or music, all of the other senses dampen down. So you're not able to notice nature with your eyes, nose, mouth, hands, or feet because your sense of hearing is already kind of hijacked from um, your present moment experience in nature. And nature, I think, really reminds us that we are human beings, even though the 21st century many of us are more human doings. So giving yourself permission to really be a human being. So I'd like to shift a little bit and share with you some easy ways that you can be mindful in nature, like immediately right after this podcast, even. Something as simple as looking up from screens up at the sky and noticing the shades of the sky colors, whether it be in the morning, afternoon, evening, night, the shapes of clouds, shadows, the star speckled night sky, the moon. Or if you are engaged in a lot of indoor work with your computers or rounding in the hospital, working with patients in the clinic, it's definitely beneficial to give your eyes a break by looking up and looking far away. If there's a window, can you look for nature far away, like a tree or some shrubbery or plants, flowers outside, just for a few moments, giving your eyes a little bit of a break? And then if you don't have a window close by, is there like a picture of nature or even a magazine cover that has some nature on it? Walking, but not just walking, mindfully walking and noticing the sensations of the earth beneath your feet is a formal mindfulness meditation practice. And then
And
laying
walking
down in nature.
barefoot, I have to add, walking barefoot on the grass, like take your shoes off and actually connect to what's under there, not just power walking in your tennies.
Yeah, and walking barefoot on the beach in the sand. Also laying down in nature. So whether it be like a grassy field or a snowy landscape, literally allowing the earth, whatever temperature it may be at that moment in time, letting the earth literally support you and letting yourself be held.
Other thoughts I have is just being outside in different weather and really being mindful of the weather. So the snow, the rain, the fog, all of those, noticing that is a very mindful activity. Noticing the mist, noticing the raindrops, the soaking, the snow feels very different. Or on a windy day, what does that feel like? We often talk in yoga about resisting, like the wind, or resisting the weather, or resisting the foggy, cloudy day. And this idea of, can you just bathe in whatever it is? It doesn't have to be a forest. Can you bathe in the rain? Can you bathe in the fog? This is reminding me that my middle son, hopefully he'll never listen to this podcast, he used to go out in the rain when he was little, fully dressed up in an outfit of something. So it was either Harry Potter or Star Wars, but he would go out when it's raining. Very specifically, and do his whole caricature thing with his lightsabers or his wand in the rain. And he would get so excited that it was raining, it was time to go out and like do this whole creative thing. It was actually really funny. We were just on a trip together and I said something about, oh, I don't know if we want to go. We were going up to the up country. It looks like it's raining up there. And he said, I love the rain. Let's go. Right. Now I'm thinking like, we were in Hawaii. We're supposed to be in this beautiful tropical place, yet he wants to go to the rain. But for him, it was very much a mindful practice, that it was much more fun to do. I can't even really describe it, but it was a whole thing that he did. And he would, get on all of his outfits and he would come in completely soaked and completely just calm and healed and amazing. And so it's really interesting how weather can be a part of it. And then the other thought is barefoot. So the sensation of the sand, the sensation of even wet grass or dry grass, or having just been in Hawaii, they have that kind of squishy grass. I don't know. They don't have that grass where I am, I think, because we don't have enough moisture, but like that kind of is probably like golf course grass, feels very different. Muddy grass feels very different. Other fun options when you have kids too might be like a bird bath or a bird feeder. So you can then watch the birds come in, or planting a butterfly garden or gardening. And that those are all ways to sort of be in nature that are, don't take that much effort. Really, you can just, a bird bath could be right outside a window, or plant an herb garden, for example, smells. Another fun thing is to take a piece of cardboard or even take a box and like put it over some muddy dirt area and come back a few days later and see what's under there. Again, it's all like just noticing all the things in our natural world that we miss. Cloud spotting is another fun one. Lying on the earth, but noticing the clouds and giving them descriptions and enjoying sort of watching them move and watching the sky and watching the trees from underneath. All things that we just don't take that much time to do. And you can also do things that you normally do inside, outside, like take your book outside, for example, if you're reading a book, and noting that it's actually much more uncomfortable usually to be on your phone outside, but a book, it's easier to read, for example. And so, can you really enjoy nature fully? Another thing that comes to mind is bird watching. And something that I see a lot of generations doing, older grandparents taking younger kids out to enjoy nature, and that can be something that people on different ends of the age spectrum can really enjoy, and those of us in the middle can enjoy watching them connect and enjoy over it. So I think there's so many opportunities. And two other things came to mind as we were talking. One is that I think mindfulness and nature are also synergistic. I always like to look for things that kind of are additive in terms of our health and wellness. And so being in nature in and of itself is healing, and being mindful in nature makes it really magical. And so that combining the two is really where just the optimal impact and positive effects and good feelings come. And I think that's our intent in doing the Connect in Nature, to be mindful, but not just do mindfulness in perhaps a conference room, but do mindfulness in nature where you get all of these benefits together. The other thing that comes to mind is there's a lot of research done on awe, and the idea of awe and wonder. And nature brings up awe and wonder very often for many people. And I'm thinking about Muir Woods, which is part of our retreat. And it's this beautiful place with these beautiful redwood trees. And it really does evoke awe and wonder. These, trees that have been there for so long and are so beautiful. And we know that that has just tremendous effects on our health and mental health in particular, and wellness. And so noticing or purposefully exposing yourself to things that inspire awe. That's why so many people go to places like the Grand Canyon, or I don't know, the Grand Tetons. I'm apparently into grand words, but thinking that things that inspire awe really do open up our mind to thinking differently and really impact the nervous system in very positive ways.
As you were listing ways to be mindful in nature, two other ways came up, including just taking your morning tea or coffee outside and drinking that mindfully while you are in nature, and then eating outside. So sometimes if you're at home, like if you're working from home, or if you're in a clinical setting, if there's a space that you could even just eat a couple bites outside, that experience changes. It might help foster the mindful consumption of a meal as well. So being creative about how you incorporate being in nature, even in your day-to-day lives. And so, as always, we'd like to end our podcast with some reflection questions for you. After everything you've heard, would you like to incorporate more noticing and being in nature? And how would you do that?
Can you remember great experiences in nature that you had as a child, and remember how they felt?
We've given you lots of different ideas. So, what's something easy that you can set an intention to notice about nature or be in nature every day?
How can you spend or plan to spend intentionally more time in nature on your own or with your kids in the year ahead? And where is the nearest nature to you? Is it in your backyard? Is there a park? Where is it? And how can it be easy to get there and take advantage of it?
We hope that you will consider joining us for our first ever Mindful Healers retreat. Connect in nature. All humans in healthcare are welcome. There are only 15 spots remaining. And as Jesse mentioned previously, we will have opportunities to forest bathe in the legendary, magical Muir Woods together in community.
Join us after the sound of the singing bowl for today's mindful moment offering. Thanks so much for listening. And if you enjoyed listening, please leave us a review and share the podcast with others who you think might benefit. As always, if you want to declutter your mind, be more present, and start truly living your one wild and precious life, come find us at the mindfulhealerspodcast.com.
Work with one of us.
Work with both of us.
Start or uplevel your mindfulness practice.
Discover how mindful coaching can change your life.
Or even better, do both as part of our Mindful Healers programs and retreats. You can find links to find out more about our programs and join our communities at themindfulhealerspodcast.com.
Reach out and get started on your journey to a life better lived today.
The content of this podcast is not meant to be medical or life advice. If you choose to participate in our mindful moments, please do so safely. Welcome to this mindful moment offering. This is a little bit of a different invitation. Perhaps if you are not already outside, I'm going to invite you to step outside for the next few minutes. And it doesn't really matter where outside, just so long as you're outside. So you might want to pause and replay or press the play button once you are outside. So inviting you to stand in a position of comfort, your feet placed hip width distance apart, your arms, hands resting on either side of your hips or clasped behind you. I'm going to invite you to join me in a mindful walk in nature. And first, by simply noticing the support of the ground beneath your feet and noticing what that feels like. Taking a breath in, exhaling either through your nose or your mouth. Are there any scents of nature that you're able to smell? Grass, flowers, other vegetation, even the smell of humidity, like the smell of rain or the smell of snow. And then just taking a moment to notice any sounds. Listening, trying not to get caught up in storylines of the origins of the sounds, but simply listening right here, right now. And then as you're ready, blinking open eyes, taking a moment to look around you, spotting all the different aspects of nature that you see, from the sky to the dirt that might be close by, any wood from trees or bushes, leaves, whatever color they are. Are you able to notice any wildlife? Are there butterflies or moths flying near you? Even bees? Are there squirrels somewhere in the distance or perhaps close by? Seeing if you can simply notice all around you with your eyes. And then as you're ready, inviting you to shift your foot forwards. So shifting your weight onto one foot and then shifting the foot forwards, taking one step and then shifting weight, lifting the other foot and placing it in front of you once again. And at your own pace, shifting your feet in a way to move forward. This way of walking that you're so used to doing. And perhaps I'm inviting you to do this habit much more slowly, and so that it's done in a different way. And what are you noticing as you're moving your feet differently, perhaps slower? Simply noticing the sensations of walking. I'm going to invite you to continue to do this at your own pace for however long you'd like, continuing to walk mindfully, noticing the sights, the smells, the sounds, even inviting some gentle touch of nature, bending down and feeling grass or leaf or snow or dirt, whatever nature you happen to find that can be touched gently and respectfully. This is how you can forest bathe just wherever you are. And whenever your forest bathing journey is ready to come to a close, inviting you to take a moment to close eyes and notice thoughts, body sensations, emotions that arise for you after that self guided forest bathing practice. Thank you so much for joining us for this mindful moment offering.